All right, so there's a topic that I've been discussing for years now. For years now about the homeless population and, our access to resources and the resources that 211 gives and that all of those social workers and outreach programs give, and so on and so forth, right? So I've been talking about the programs. I can only discuss the ones that I have been a part of or that I have volunteered at or things like that. That's all I have an experience with. And anything that's on paper isn't necessarily what is happening there, because you can have things on paper that aren't actually happening there. And you can have things on paper that are happening, but that are being swept under the rug. And so a few months ago, there was this 211 resource that the employee, and I won't name the resource because essentially the resource itself isn't the problem. It is their employees that are the problem, because they train and hire peer counselors, which means that they train and hire individuals who have had experienced similar things as to what you are experiencing. The problem with this, and this is what I understand why, teachers would have me train some of the peer counselors in high school, because essentially if you don't understand the difference between your perception and experience, you're always going to involve your perception of the reasoning of why you did what you did in your assumptions that you make when watching another person and what they do. So this individual from this 211 resource was a shelter program that I really, really needed at the time. But instead I dealt with my winter illnesses on my own, including paying for hotels after procedures because of what this woman did. Not only did she start our conversation with, well, you can't bullshit a bullshitter, which means you already automatically assume that I'm bullshitting you. She also brought up a lot of personal information using examples of her own life, but trying to direct them to my own life as if she knew me. And the problem with that is that the perspective that she had was similar to the perspective that my sister has, which is great for your experience. If she would have been analyzing my sister, she might have been right on point. But because she was talking to a person who has been dealing with chronic illness and medical gaslighting and neglect for several years, she didn't know who she was up against. So not only did she lie to me, she promised medical advocacy and then ghosted me the day of my appointments, and then didn't call back until weeks later to try to offer me shelter after I reported what had been done to me. And then when I requested the notes of the services that she was provided, then she said that she could not provide those notes. Only our text message communications were those notes. Later on, did I find out from the parking attendant where I was staying that if you request the notes, they are legally supposed to give them to you so that you can see what they're writing about you, because essentially they're lying. They're lying to make people seem like they're uncooperative for these houseless programs, when in fact they are the ones causing the difficulties for us, because they want to label us mentally ill or drug addicts. It's the only way they are willing to help. If you're labeled disabled, hell no. They don't want to help you if you're solely labeled disabled, because essentially that puts a label on there that requires Medi-Cal, Medicare, and Social Security to pay attention. But if you're homeless and a drug addict, let's just ignore that shit. Doesn't matter how much medical attention they need. First, we gotta deal with the fact that they're mentally ill and fucking drug addicts. If they can't deal with that, then we're just gonna ignore their medical needs, which is essentially what's been happening to me for over 2 years. I'm just shining a big old light, doing all the steps that ECM and these social workers are telling me to do that will lead to safe housing, and it's not leading there. It's not leading there because essentially they don't have a program for disabled people, because their intention is always to break you. The same way the military breaks people in boot camp so that you'll accept any help and you'll be grateful for whatever help you get, even if it is living with irresponsible individuals who see their perception and their experience in life as the only possible outcome of decisions made in a person's life. And that is the mistake that fucking peer counselors do. Peer-to-peer support has to be equal. The moment you start putting, you can use the comparison of your experience to try to gauge a person. But the moment you start assuming that your experience is their experience is the moment you lost that peer-to-peer connection. Because now you've already assumed that that individual is a liar, the same way that doctors, nurses, social workers, and everybody else who has dropped the ball has done. And the problem is that a lot of these homeless services are like this. So they break people, and if they are unable to rebuild themselves, then they're fucked because they didn't do the work, even though they were already broken when they requested the help. They wouldn't have fucking requested the help if they weren't desperate in the first place. Okay, you draw this out. So make it simple. For those of us who are requesting assistance to leave this country safely, then do it. Help us leave this country. Help us get our citizenship in a different country so we can get the fuck out of here before you kill us. Give us that little bit of respect, dude. Because you know how fucked up this system is. And essentially, there's nothing you can do. So since there's nothing you can do, stop lying to us. Stop being as harmful as doctors and social workers lying to us as peer support, saying that the help is going to come when you know damn well it's not going to come. It's not going to come. And the harm that y'all are committing, it's exponential harm that you are committing to people's bodies, to their physical bodies, and then claiming that it's their mind that's broken when you broke their bodies before you broke their mind. Their bodies breaking and the suffering of those broken bodies is what broke their minds. The system gaslighting them consistently about their lives is what broke their minds. So just keep that in consideration when you're sitting there judging other individuals for their lives. Because you have no fucking idea, even though you're a peer support individual, you have no fucking idea what's going on in their lives. And because of your assumptions, people fall through the fucking gaps. Because as I said before, they keep telling me to call 211 again. Why? Every time I call 211, they send me to places that harm me more and cause more trauma. I don't want to end up like the people who commit suicide or fall to drugs. I don't want to be that person again because I've tried to commit suicide, and because of my suicide attempts, now I'm labeled as a substance abuser and a possible suicide risk. So doctors don't help me anyways. They just leave me out in the cold in very dangerous situations. So fuck that shit. You want to kill us? Kill us directly. You want to murder us? Have the balls to do it directly, not through systematic abuse. Because you're part of the problem if you're enabling it. You're part of the problem if you're staying quiet about those who are enabling it. Because this is a systematic programs that you guys are enabling to try to prove that people either need the help or don't need the help, but you're pushing them to addiction and suicide because they're desperate enough to ask for help. But you want them to hit rock bottom. Chronic ill, rock bottom looks like drug addiction and suicide. When you don't give us help, that's what it looks like. People commit suicide. Because that's what drug addiction is anyways. It's long suicide, long timed out suicide. Just do it like I did. Swallow it whole. Try to fucking kill yourself quickly. Because that drawn out suicide gives them all of the evidence they need to prove that we're drug addicts and not chronically ill people. But even if you do it like I did, you try to commit suicide with street drugs, you're going to be accused of being a substance abuser. No matter what, and you'll have to live with the consequences. Even if doctors never live with the consequences of not treating you, you as the chronically ill person will have to live with the consequences. So you're going to either have to learn to be really strong and ignore this bullshit and keep denying any subpar care that they try to give you, or you can kill yourself. Because you have to stay strong in this. You have to stay strong in this to be able to say, you know what you are doing to us is wrong just because we applied for disability. You told us to apply for disability because our bodies were deteriorating. And then to prove that we were not disabled, then you disabled us more with your tactics to be able to harm us. And you continue to do this pattern over and over and over again, breaking families and patients to the ground. Why? Because why would you have to commit genocide and murder disabled people if you get them to kill themselves? It's that fucking simple. Whether you want to acknowledge it or not, that is what applying for disability is like. You push people to suicide and then blame them for their suicide attempts. You push them to drug addiction and then you blame them for their drug addiction, even though they requested the help before, even though they were willing to do all your mental health programs before they got to that point. And even with professionals watching, you still missed the suicidal patient because you were too busy gaslighting that patient into believing it was all in their head when there's actual blood work and shit that shows all of my inflammatory markers when I was in flare-ups. All of the records are there if you haven't deleted them. You just didn't want to look. All of the doctors past 2020 just didn't want to look. Social Security didn't want to look at all of the records submitted since I applied for my case when I was 19 years old. Because if they would have seen it, they would have seen acute organ failure. They would have seen the inflammatory markers. They would have seen the joint problems. I've been having the claw in my left hand since then. Now I'm living with left side of my body as if I had a stroke because you ignored all those symptoms for years. For years. When I had already requested help. The medications drove me to mental health problems because it triggered mental health problems from being on those prolonged medications, but there's no accountability and responsibility from the medical facilities. I'm the one who's labeled. I'm the one who's not getting assistance for housing and food the way my body requires it, for my body to stay healthy, so I can return and be a productive member of society. I am still not getting the help that I need because I'm homeless. So just keep that in mind when you're building these systems and saying, well, I'm not a part of it. The way you put your notes as a doctor, as a nurse, matters. The way you allow other doctors and nurses to do this to patients matters, because you're our first protection from corrupt systems that are trying to break us. But the moment that you give them the fuel that they need to break us, you are now enabling and providing shit, knowing how the system breaks us. And whether you want to acknowledge it or not, most of you acknowledge it in person. And you seem to be okay with it. You seem to be okay with breaking patients. Because you could put on that note something differently. But you choose not to. So keep breaking your patients and blaming them. And then watching how the system destroys them because of your notes, because you refuse to acknowledge, hey, you know what? There really wasn't anything I could do, but it wasn't my fault or the patient's fault. We just don't have the right tools or diagnostic procedures for this condition yet. That's all you had to say. There's no wrongdoing. But no, you made it into medical malpractice when it didn't need to be. And the DEA helped you. So keep it up. Keep it up. I love you and have a beautiful day.